Hello everyone, welcome back to Constant Learners. In today's video, we are discussing the difference between file system and database management system. Okay, to understand this, we are going to start with what is a file system and what are the drawbacks of a file system. Okay, and then eventually we will get to the difference between file system and database management system, and we will identify why DBMS makes a better option to store data than the file system. Okay. Now, to understand this, it's important that you know the basics of database management system, how it works, what it does, the characteristics, advantages, and disadvantages of database management system also. Okay. If you know these, it will be very easy to understand the difference between file system and DBMS, and also to understand why DBMS is a better option to store the data. If you haven't watched these videos or if you haven't studied the basics, then you can watch my previous videos. I'll share the link in the description box below. And let's get started. Now here on the screen, you can see this image, okay? You can see that here I have a folder. I think it must be very small, but yeah, so I have a folder named SEM3, which is stored inside the drive C, correct? Now, this folder contains a lot of files, as you can see, docs1, docs2, doc3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. All right. All of these files are named as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. Okay. So we have a folder named SEM3, which has a lot of files, and these files contain data. All right. These files include all the details about the students studying in third semester in all the branches of our college. So let's say if I have total 5 branches and approximately 60 or 70 students in each branch, then approximately we have 300 to 350 students in all the branches in third semester, right? So this folder SEM3 contains almost 300 to 350 files, right? So total files in this folder is between 300 and 350. All right. Now, each file contains data about one student. Okay. So, this file, first one, contains details about one student, that is first student. This contains detail about another student. This contains detail about another student. So, we have one file dedicated to store details about one student. Okay. Every file contains information about one student. It has that student's name, address, that is local address, permanent address, then mobile number, guardian details, their phone number, their name, their address, and so on, their course, etc. Okay. So all of these files contain details about one student each. All right. I hope that this was clear. So if there are 300 to 350 students in third semester, then here we will have approximately 300 to 350 files. Correct? Right? This is known as a file system. Okay. In a file system, we have files which can store any kind of data. That means this data could be an image, it could be a GIF, it could be a video, or any animation, or it could have it could be a document, like here we have the doc file. Then it could be a word file, PDF, Excel file, anything. Okay, it could store any kind of data. So all of these are known as files. All right, and these files are stored inside a folder. So let's say these are the files which are stored inside the folder SEM3. Correct? Now this folder SEM3 is stored directly inside the C drive, but I could also store it inside another folder named college. Okay, and this folder could then be stored inside the hard disk or a drive. Correct? Either the drive or a hard disk, or maybe any other storage device, right? So what is a file system? A file system is a format of storing data in the form of files which are stored inside a folder, which may or may not be stored inside another folder, and these folders can then be stored inside the drives or any other storage spaces. Right? I hope that file system was clear. Right? I hope that this was clear. And what is database management system? Database management system is a software. So database management system is a software that stores, retrieves, or manages the data inside the database. We've already discussed this in so much of detail that we're not going to get into any more depth in this video. Okay. So now here in each file, it contains data about each student. Okay, let's say in file 1 there is data about a student named Rakesh Sinha. He is studying in the course of electronics communication. His phone number is blah blah blah, his permanent address is blah blah blah, his current address is so 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 and so on. Okay, then guardian details and everything, that means all the details about the student is stored in this file. Then in file 2, let's say we have details about a student named Rita Chakrabarti. It also has his roll number. Okay, so there's their roll number and their name, then their course, or their branch, or their phone number, their permanent address, current address, and so on. So every file is containing data about each student. Correct? So this is the file system in this scenario. However, let's say we have a database college. Okay, and then we have a table, say sem underscore 3. Okay, and this table contains all the data about the students studying in third semester in all the 5 branches. Let's say it has their roll number, then their name, their mobile number, then the branch that they are studying in, then it has their permanent address, their current address, then let's say their guardian name, guardian phone number, and so on. Okay, so here the data is in the form of a document, and here the data is in the form of a table. Right? Now, let's get to the different scenarios that will help us to identify the difference between the file system and the database management system. I hope that you've understood what is a file system, and I hope that you already know what is a database management system. Right? Now, first, let's say I want to look for a student named Rahul Bappar. Okay, in this file system I have to look for a student named Rahul Bappar. How do I know? We have, let's say, 2 3 4, then fifth file, then sixth file, and all the files are named as 1 2 3 4 5 6 and so on until let's say total we have 347 students in the class. So this is file name 347, or file number 347. So now amongst these 347 files I have to look for one student whose name is Rahul Bappar. Is it possible for me to do that? Can I do that without checking each file? Can I maybe push some query or maybe use some search option that will help me to get to the file of the student named Rahul Bappar? Is that possible? No, because none of these files are given the name of the student. They are just in a sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So, it's not possible for me to identify the student whose name is Rahul Bappar without looking at each file, unless I know the file name of that student. Let's say he tells me that my file name is 11. I'll directly go to the file 11 and look for his details. But what if I don't know the file name? Then it will not be possible, right? However, in case of database management system, the data is stored in the form of tables, right? And in the previous video, we saw that we can simply use structured query language to query the database. So we can send a query to the database that I have a student named Rahul Babbar in the table SEM3 and I want the details about him. I'll get the details. Of course, this is not how you query the database, but I'm just telling you that this is how we are going to create the query. Okay, so it's going to be a select query, select star. Star means everything from. We write the table name and so on. So I'm going to give the condition that name of the student is Rahul Babbar. So even if I have two or three students, or let's say even five students with the same name, I will have to identify the exact student from those five students, not from 347 students, right? It is easier to identify the student that I am looking for when the number of students is less. But if I have to look for 347 files, it's going to be very complicated, right? So the first case in the file system and the database management system is that querying the database is easier than accessing the data from the file system. Right? So that was the first point. Now, next, let's get to the second scenario. Okay? Let's say that there are 2 to 3 people who are responsible for storing the data in the files. Okay? So let's say person 1, or let's say admin 1, started today in the morning, stored the data of this student, this student, this student, this student. Okay, and there's a list. He has a sheet wherein there's a list of student and he has to check the name of the student when his data has been entered. Now let's say he entered the data for 5 students but ticked only 4. He forgot to check the 5th student. He forgot to check it marked, or let's say done. That means his details have been entered. Now admin 2 came and he wanted to continue entering the data about the students. So he started with the 5th student. So on the 6th file, he will again store the student of the details of this same student. So the same student, let's say Rakesh Sinha, has been entered twice. The details of the same student has been entered twice. So what is happening in this case? We are getting repetition of data, right? The data is getting added repeatedly. That is, we are getting redundant data, right? However, that is not possible with database management system, because in DBMS we are storing all the data about the student, that is his roll number, his name, his mobile number. Now I am going to declare that the roll number has to be unique, the mobile number has to be unique. That means no two rows can have same mobile number, no two rows can have same roll number. The name can be repeated, the branch can be repeated, address can also be same for two students, the guardians can also be same. So all the rest of the details can be same, but the roll number and mobile number has to be unique for both the students. If I have put that condition on my database, then, or let's say on my table or columns of my table, then in that case I will not be able to add the data about the same student twice, because his phone number is going to remain the same, his roll number is going to remain the same. So it is not possible to add redundant data in case of database management system, right? So the second point is file system can have redundant data, however DBMS prevents redundant data. All right. Let's say in the first file, the admin has added roll number, then name, then permanent address, then current address, and then mobile number. And in the second file, let's say he added roll number, then he added name, then he added mobile number, then he added current address, and then he added permanent address. So the sequence of the data, the sequence in which he has stored the data of each student is not consistent, right? However, in case of database, all the data is stored in the consistent manner, right? So the data is properly consistent in case of database management system. However, in case of file system, there is no consistency in the format and storage of data. All right. In DBMS, the data is neatly arranged and systematically stored, which prevents data inconsistency. Also, there's a possibility that in case of file system, the admin may totally forget to add the any field or any information about the student. However, in case of DBMS, it is not possible to input the details, incomplete details, all right, incomplete information. The database, if we've mentioned that we have to have this information, this cannot stay empty, this particular column cannot stay null, then in that case it will never accept incomplete data, right? So thus data storage and format may be inconsistent in case of file system, and in case of DBMS, data is neatly stored and systematically arranged, which prevents inconsistency of data. Then next, in case of file system, see here in case of file system it's easy. Just open a file, input all the data and we are done, right? But in case of database management system, we need to enter the query, right? That when we are adding the data in the table, it's a little complicated, right? We have to make sure that we are adding brackets in the proper place, we are adding commas in the proper locations, there's no comma in unnecessary places, there's a proper semicolon at the end. So we have to take a proper care of we are entering a proper query and we are building the database or the tables perfectly, right? So in case of file system, creating the data or storing the data is easy, okay, but afterwards when we have to access the data, it becomes complicated. And in case of DBMS, um, initially, creating the structure of the database might be a little complicated, but fetching the data or making changes to the data is easier. All right. I hope that this was clear, because here in case of file system, we need the proper location of the data. We need the proper name of the file that we need to access. In case of DBMS, we just need to have a little information, some unique information about the data that we are expecting or we are trying to access, and we'll be easily able to access that data from the database, right? That is not possible in case of file system. All right. So it is easy to build and store the data in the file system, but it is difficult to access the data later. And in case of DBMS, it is complicated to build the database structure, but accessing the data is easy. I hope that this was clear. Now, in case of file system, the security is less. All right. Why the security is less? Let's say I permanently deleted this file. I'll never be able to get it back. Then it's gone, right? So anyone can delete the data from the file system. There are no restrictions to access the data in the file system. If I know which folder I have to look into, I can directly go to that folder, fetch that file, use that file, and maybe by mistake even delete the file. However, in case of database management system, we can provide restricted access to different users. Okay, that means some user might only be able to read the data from the database. Some user might be able to read and write, but may not be able to delete the data from the database, right? So there can be different restrictions to access the database, which prevents any loss to data, right? And thus keeps the data extremely secure. So the next point will be that data in the file system has less security and data in DBMS has very high security, or the data is very secure. Correct? But again, the file system is less expensive. That is, it is cheaper alternative to store the data. And DBMS, if you're not using the free version of DBMS, that is except for MySQL, the other databases that are paid versions of databases are very expensive. Okay, it can get very expensive. Correct? So that was all about the difference between file system and database management system. We tried to look at the pros and cons of using both the file system and the database management system. Now, for the most part, we know that, of course, DBMS is the better option for storing the data, and most importantly, for retrieving the data from the database, right? Storing the data, this is also a good option. File system is also good for storing the data. But in case we have to retrieve the data, manage the data, update the data, change the data, then DBMS is the better option, right? I hope you like this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more videos on database management system. I also have videos on big data, analysis of data. So please visit my channel and see how it works for you. Thank you so much for watching.